So my name is Laython Ford. I just wanted to thank the group from Hybrix and Back to Your Roots for having us all out here. Um, this information that we're learning here I find extremely valuable. So I'll give a bit of a background about myself, and then I'll go into the company background, and then I'll go into the products that we use on our farm, and then how we are able to apply them. So I live in a small town called Irma, Alberta. Our claim to fame right now is Carson Soucy, defenseman for Vancouver Canucks. Grew up in our small town. Town of 500, farm community, oil field community. Grew up on the family farm. We had a dairy up until 2001. Before that, long-standing generational farm with my grandparents. And around that 2007, the farm had their cordial split, we'll call it, and my dad and us went on our own. For a long period of time there, I was distracted with being a young guy, so I was playing football, not really around the farm. I did what every Alberta kid did and got into the oil field. So working in the patch, if some of you guys have done it, it's an unforgiving, thankless industry. And in 2016, I decided that enough is enough. I wasn't on the farm much. I couldn't pay attention at all to the farm, so I started to look for opportunities in the egg industry. I got my start in 2016 with a company called Intelligent Egg, selling blockage monitors. So I was covering essentially Outlook West for the company. I've had a couple of stops along the way, worked for Brandt Manufacturing, and 2 years ago, SurePoint Egg reached out to me through a recruiter and flat out asked, what do you know about liquid application? My experience, none. Absolutely zero. Well, how about an automated chem handler? What do you know about that? None. So here I am getting approached by a company that I know nothing about, that on that side of the business, I've never dealt with. Liquid application and the spraying side. When the sprayer started up on the farm, I take off. That's Dad's baby. I don't touch it. So I took a leap of faith and decided that I was going to jump on with SurePoint Egg. Company history about SurePoint Egg. It's not a new company. It's just new into Canada. SurePoint Egg was started in 2007 by Blaine Ginther, Matt Walters, and Josh Walters with the idea of trying to help farmers get product into the ground. So this is the timeline. In 2020, 2021, we started in a joint venture with John Deere. John Deere this summer finished the acquisition of SurePoint. The beautiful part about it is that we are an arm of John Deere, and we aren't controlled essentially by John Deere. What that does is it gives me the flexibility to be in settings like this, right? They want to see growth in the business, and they really do not interfere with our day-to-day. So again, SurePoint's a proven systems approach. So all of our own software engineers, everything's in-house. Our harnessing's in-house. The controls that we built are in-house. We do buy other products to complete the system, but when you buy a SurePoint kit, it is well-sourced products. That is our engineering and our development around those well-sourced products. So we're not trying to Mickey Mouse liquid systems together. It's a full systems approach. On this slide here, it's just a description of what we can do, right? So SurePoint being in Atwood, Kansas, it is heavily based around planter country. And again, being down there, there's a lot more liquid applications, so that's where the focus came. So from tank configurations to pump options to flow meters, distribution, kind of have a full sweep of it. Furthermore, we have another full planter line, but in the essence of time, I didn't want to talk about that and bring it into the slide. But again, just more products that we've worked on. We do a lot of custom application products with potato planters and different floaters and dry applicators as well. But again, for time and purpose, I want to talk about what we did and how did I apply it. So I got to give a lot of credit to my dad. My dad has never been the type of farmer to always prescribe to what the rep in town says. You need this stand, you need to do this, X, Y, Z, right? He's never prescribed to that method of farming. I was talking with Dallas at the beginning here, trying to, Dallas has met my dad, Greg's met my dad, and talking about he's a little bit different, right? He's a very interesting man. He's a very intelligent man, but he's always had a different thought process. I remember being a little kid, and this is back in 2001, 2002, my dad testing the pH of his water when he was spraying, right? Long time ago. Before that was even a thought process, he was doing that. I remember setting up a Venturi with him to add molasses into his water for top dressing. So my dad's always had this different thought process and wanted to always be a little bit different than the average commercial guy. With my experience in the egg industry, things started to change. We started to advance the farm a little bit. We changed equipment, drills, and started to get the yield going the right way. A lot of variable rate technology on our fertilizer, and started to turn the farm around. Again, my dad pushed me on the worm castings and all these other things that he wanted to try, but we didn't have a liquid system. He's like, go build me a liquid kit. And this is before I started with SurePoint. I'm like, I don't know where to start. I flat out have no idea where you want me to begin. I'm like, no. So I pushed him off from what he wanted to do, and he messed around with it, bought some product from Greg the year before, and just screened it, ran it through the spread. But this year, having the access to the job with SurePoint, I wanted to test it. I wanted to test its metal. I wanted to find its limitations. And finally, my dad got his dream of being able to do in-furrow biology. Now, the recipe and what you see on the wall here is what we used. We used Zoomzil, soft rock, humic, and not BioEggs humic. We used a poor humic product that was a nightmare to deal with, but still got it in. Liquid fish, and worm castings and compost. Kind of the worst stuff you could probably throw at a liquid kit, especially for a guy that's never dealt with a liquid kit in his life. I don't have any pictures of how we did the compost and worm castings extract, because that was pretty archaic and it looked pretty terrible, and I didn't want any proof of how bad it looked. But talking with a lot of you guys, I understand that when you're doing this stuff, it's can get pretty hodgepodge pretty fast. It's pretty interesting talking about the compost. Our compost came from Greg, so then it came from Brian, right? So it's pretty interesting, again, just through the kitchen sink at this liquid kit. So now we have all these products, we have our extract made, and it's how did I accurately meter this stuff out, right? I was talking with Grant about liquid fish and running it through a Venturi, and just the smell that comes off of that once you start mixing it and how it's kind of stinks. And I'm like, my stuff didn't stink. I didn't have to deal with that. I didn't have to deal with the stink of some of those products and the mess of some of the products of combining the liquid fish and the liquid humic and running the micronized rock floss and how it can be an issue. I didn't have those issues because I ran it through a system that we have called QuickDraw. So QuickDraw is a fully automated handler system. I'll remove the word chemical in this setting, but it's a fully automated handler system that you build your recipe on a per acre basis. You tell it how big your gallons per acre that you want to apply, and you hit start. The Honda pump automatically starts up, and it starts going through its valves and pulling the products as you need them. There's no cross-contamination between any one product, because it has a rinse cycle between each and every step. A couple more, just the different slides and how we will set these up. We have a lot of guys in the States that set them up on their fertilizer plants. We have, and then obviously a ton of infield application. Again, QuickDraw is not a new product, it's just new to Canada. There's over, I think they said last time around, there's over 2,000 of these systems running. The key components in the cabinet and the brains of the operation essentially is that micro mass meter. So when Greg and I are talking about recipes and just add a little of this, a little of that, and I'm like, no, we got to get specific here. Like, I need how many liters per acre do we want? How many liters of humic do I want? How many grams or how many pounds of micronized rock soft? How much yucca? Like everything. I'm like, I need to know fine details. My dad was just like, just start hucking the stuff in, let's get going. But with this system, you have to be very diligent and be very accurate in what you want, because when what you want, it will give you. That flow meter is a micro motion flow meter that never needs to be calibrated. So you could be pumping liquid humic through that flow meter, does a rinse cycle on the valve when it's got all your humic, and can go right into liquid fish. Two products with extremely different densities. Not even close, right? We're dealing with tard of oil, fish oil. Completely different, right? So that's gonna handle all those products. If that meter is stamped legal for trade, which on their website you can find it, that is the same meter that we like companies like TransCanada, how we sell oil, is through a 36-inch micro mass meter. The most accurate meter that's possibly out there. We haven't found anyone better. If stamped legal for trade, it's guaranteed within 0.1%. With our system, we'll guarantee it within 0.5%. And I've seen those numbers repeatedly through what we were trying to do with it. Next to it is our carrier meter. So we use an EMEG flow meter for carrier, and then we have our CAN valves to the right. All three of those combined, they talk to each other. So they'll talk to each other. They'll figure out the valve position, figure out the timing, and exactly how much you need. What this system does, it removes all that math, right? So you're sitting there, you're trying to figure out how many liters to go in this tank, how many grams of this, or how many pounds of this. This does all that for you. It takes it away. I'll give an example on the chemical side. So for the guys that are farming a Liberty canola variety, Liberty is the hardest moving chemical, one of the hardest ones we have. I needed 133 liters, and with this system, I got 133.1. So versus pouring it in through your Venturi, trying to measure off the tote, I was within 0.1 of a liter. Nobody with the Sharpie on the side of a tote is going to be as accurate as 0.1 of a liter. So that's how I mixed it. So how did I apply it? There's a few of you guys in here probably knew of Surefire, SurePoint before I ever did, right? Greg kind of put my hair on fire last year once he put my number and name out to a lot of you guys, and a lot of the conversations are starting to come back to me as we start talking. But I used the SurePoint liquid system to apply it. Now there's some differences of our kit versus anybody else's, and I'll go through them in the slides here. And we'll start with the distribution system. So right now, most of the liquid kits in Western Canada, we're dealing with an orifice setup, right? So if you have a competitor system, 9 times out of 10, it's going to have an orifice somewhere in the system. Orifice, sorry. We do sell orifices, but I don't sell orifices. But what we do sell is we sell a kit called manual dual metering tube, what you guys saw on that stand, liquid shift, and Sentinel row control. So again, because we're heavily in the planter world, we have to try to make everything fit for a broad range of customers. 99% of the time in this setting, in this style of group, it's going to be in that manual dual metering tube. Now, the differences on the dual metering, on the manual metering tube, or metering tube in general versus an orifice, is it's going to have, I'll go to the next slide, it gives a better description. It's going to have it's going to be 3 times larger than the corresponding orifice. So again, products like I ran through the purple blue metering tube with no plug-in issues, right? I've talked to some of you guys in the room here. Yeah, you did see some plug-in issues probably when the biology started to grow and started to build up in the tube. But in the 1,200 acres that I ran liquid on, I had my pre-filter pump plugged twice. And I didn't do anything fancy. I literally shut the valve, hit the screen on the frame of the drill, shoved it back in, and went back to work. With what we're doing in the biology, and why the metering tube works a lot better too, is that it's called laminar flow. So it's a lot more of a smooth transition from tank to pump to the ground. It's a lot more of a smoother flow. Versus an orifice system is going to have a lot more turbulent flow. So you're taking like 40 to 50 pounds of pressure, you're hammering the biology, trying to put it through a pinhole. Well, when you have compost, when you have worm castings, and you have micronized rock phos, trying to get stuff through that pinhole just doesn't work, right? So that's where the orifice takes that place. The other thing with the metering tube is that the metering tube is the most accurate way of putting this stuff to the ground. We have a 2% row-to-row coefficient. A lot of orifices systems, and there's some studies out there, but I have had customers flat out tell me themselves that when they're using a variable rate orifice to achieve their variable rate liquid fertilizer, they were seeing 25% row-to-row variance. You will not see that with the metering tube because it is a solid. It's just a tube and length. That's how we're achieving. That's how we're achieving our resistance and getting the right rates to the ground. So as you can see, there's a dual metering tube setup. Again, I'm extremely happy with it. What we saw on our farm, the amount of the reduction of issues that if we would have built a liquid kit the year before with using orifice, it would have just been a nightmare. There's a direct comparison right there. So again, we're 3 times the opening of a comparable orifice. Larger hole means less plugging. Compatible with a 20 mesh filter. Competitive systems out there are going to recommend a 50 to 80 mesh filter. Trying to run biology through a 50 or 80 mesh filter, like a home extract, it won't get through that. There's too many fines. You'll be plugging that system up constantly with trying to screen it down that much. When I tell guys that have ran liquid fertilizer for 20 to 30 years that we run a 20 mesh filter, they honestly can't believe it. Even with typical nitrogen application or phos application, if they will plug this 80 mesh filter quite frequently, and they're always plugging their orifices as well in a more commercial or conventional style farming. So the metering tube takes away a lot of headache. So now I'll talk about the pump. So in that previous slide, you saw the picture of my pumping at the front of my air seeder. A lot of the centrifugal pumps that we have in the systems right now, that pump is mounted at the back of the tank, right? So if you're using a hydraulic centrifugal pump that pumps all the way at the back, because that pump has to push product. With using our pump right diaphragm pump, I can mount that pump wherever I want in the system. So if I want to mount it on the roof of the cab for funsies, I can mount it on the roof of the cab for funsies. I'm not going to, but I have my pump mounted on the front of the hitch of my system. What that allows me to do is that allows me to centralize all my electronics. My section valves are all in one spot. My harness is all in one spot. And the only thing I have running to the back of my tank is my suction line. The other thing too with this system is that it's also running on a PWM valve. So with a lot of liquid systems, guys running them in the room here, you're probably using a butterfly valve or a servo valve. So in those situations, we're pushing product to that controller. That controller is now deciding if it needs flow to go to the system or if it needs flow to go to the back of the tank. With this system, with that diaphragm pump controlled by PWM, with the EMAG flow meter, we can now just sit there and tell it to speed up and slow down. I don't have a return back to tank. I can set it up if we want to for agitation purposes with the products that we're trying to push in this group. But I never ran agitation. I never ran a return back to tank. I would set my rate on my display, and that thing would just sit there all day. If I needed 18 gallons an acre, that's how much we applied. The only time that thing came off of 18 gallons an acre was for maybe 2 seconds in and out of the headlands. It is the response time with this pump being PWM is instantaneous. It's just instant. If I wanted to change my rate, say from 12 gallons an acre to 18, again, you're about a 2 to maybe 5 second delay. Versus if you're running a ground drive pump and you want to change your rate, you're running back there, figuring out, playing with your pressure, and just trying to dial it in, where I'm hitting a button in my display, in my cab, and back to work I go. Other issue and downside with the centrifugal pump is that the reliability. If those pumps run dry on a centrifugal pump, you guys have ran them before, you know that can cause issue. There's an O-ring on that shaft that will blow out and you'll start to leak product or start to leak oil. With this system being tied into our rate controller, what it does is the second it's got no flow for 3 seconds, it shuts the pump off. It stops. It won't hurt, it can't harm itself. But with also being a diaphragm pump, we have lots of customers in the States that have over 1 million gallons of product through this system. When you tell a conventional farmer that's been running with nitrogen for 20 or 30 years that I can get 1 million gallons out of a pump, they get pretty, their tone changes and their facial expressions change quite a bit, right? A lot of the bigger guys, they would have a spare pump or 2 spare pumps on the shelf to deal with that issue when those pumps go down. That's a picture of my PR30 pump. It's mounted again on the front of my drill there. This is that EMAG flow meter. So again, typical flow meters that we're running, the turbine style flow meters. In the products that we're using, I forget who you were talking about yesterday about those flow meters and how they don't last when we start running micronized soft rock and the calcium, right? There's nothing in this flow meter. She's a straight shot through, electromagnetic, picking up the pulses as the product's coming by. This flow meter is either going to work or it's not going to work. But I haven't had one fail yet in my territory. I talked about the low rate control a little bit. Usually what we're seeing in Western Canada is that you buy a part from here, part from this guy, part from this guy, try to put it all together. What SurePoint does, it's like I said at the beginning, it's that full systems approach, right? When you unbox your kit, when you buy it, I want everything to be there and more. So that you're not running to town, spending an extra $50 here, $60 here, calling this guy for support, calling this guy over here. Everything is all together in one spot and in one box. Those rate controllers are built in-house by us, obviously, and all the engineering that goes behind it is also ours as well. So that's just what the display looks like. So you'd have your gallons per acre on the top left, or off to the left there, second bar down. And you just sit there and you'll dial in your rates wherever you want. The nice thing with Sentinel 2 is it's also got variable rate capabilities. So if we ever have the conversation of trying to VR some of the biologicals, Greg and myself and Lauren, we've talked about it. I'm going to personally on my own farm do some trials. So where my commercial fertilizer is going to back off, I'm going to increase my biology and see if I can get some of my sandy or high salinity zones to maybe start to produce better than they have. I have no trial data on that. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I don't know if I'm wasting my time. But with my system, I have the technology at my fingertips. I'm gonna utilize it. That's all I have. Just another picture of a couple different drills that I was able to be part of setting up. But with that, I'll take questions. I've talked to a lot of you already in that other room, but I'll be here for the remainder of it. Any questions? Tough crowd. Oh, Denton.
Is there any reason your system couldn't be retrofitted to run like on a ground sprayer or a clearance sprayer?
We had that conversation yesterday on the pump side of it and the flow meter side of it. I would have to call back to HQ and see.
Yeah.
I know Horsch is running a diaphragm pump, and I know those pumps are highly utilized in South Africa, those diaphragm versus centrifugal pumps. There's just a lot more accuracy with the diaphragm than a centrifugal. And same thing with that flow meter. I think, like we talked about yesterday, some of those products that we're going to try to run through the sprayer will deteriorate a lot faster with a typical flow meter. Again, I'm going to relay it back to HQ and see what we can do.
Okay.
Yeah. Sweet.